United States-Venezuela relations refers to the bilateral relationship between the United States and Venezuela. Relations have traditionally been characterized by an important trade and investment relationship, as well as cooperation in combating the production and transit of illegal drugs. As of the 23rd of January 2019, the United States and Venezuela have no formal diplomatic ties, but continue to have relations under Juan Guaidó, who serves as disputed interim president recognized by around 54 countries, including the United States. Relations were strong under traditional governments in Venezuela, such as those of Carlos Andrés Pérez and Rafael Caldera. However, tensions increased after the socialist president Hugo Chavez assumed elected office in 1999. Tensions between the countries increased further after Venezuela accused the administration of George W. Bush of supporting the Venezuelan failed coup attempt in 2002 against Chavez, an accusation that was partly retracted later. Relations between the United States and Venezuela have been further strained when the country expelled the U.S. ambassador in September 2008 in solidarity with Bolivia after a U.S. ambassador was accused of cooperating with violent anti-government groups in the country, though relations thawed somewhat under President Barack Obama in June 2009, only to steadily deteriorate once again shortly afterwards. In February 2014, the Venezuelan government ordered 3 American diplomats out of the country on charges of promoting violence. On the 23rd of January, during the 2019 Venezuelan presidential crisis, Nicolas Maduro announced that Venezuela was breaking ties with the United States following President Trump's announcement that the U.S. recognized Juan Guaidó, the Venezuelan opposition leader, as the interim president. On the 26th of January 2019, Maduro backtracked the request which diffused the situation from a few days earlier with the request of the embassy staff to leave. Maduro's government was in a 30-day talk with the Trump administration to open a U.S. interest office on the 26th of January. During the Spanish-American Wars of Independence, the United States was officially neutral but permitted Spanish-American agents to obtain weapons and supplies. With the reception of Manuel Torres in 1821, the Gran Colombia became the first former Spanish colony recognized by the United States, and the United States was the second government to recognize an independent Spanish-American state. At that time, mutual relations have existed since the U.S. established a diplomatic mission in Santa Fe de Bogotá. In 1823, the next year the Anderson-Gull Treaty became the first bilateral treaty the U.S. concluded with another American country. U.S. relations with the governments in Bogotá, Quito and Caracas were not interrupted when Ecuador and Venezuela left the Federation in 1830. The Venezuela crisis of 1902-03 saw a naval blockade of several months imposed against Venezuela by Britain, Germany and Italy because of President Cipriano Castro's refusal to pay foreign debts and damages suffered by European citizens in a recent Venezuelan civil war. Castro assumed that the United States' Monroe Doctrine would see that the U.S. prevent European military intervention, but at the time the U.S. saw the doctrine as concerning European seizure of territory rather than intervention per se, though U.S. Secretary of State Elihu Root characterized Castro as a crazy brute or a monkey. President Theodore Roosevelt was concerned with the prospects of penetration into the region by Germany, with Castro failing to back down under U.S. pressure and increasingly negative British and American press reactions to the affair. The blockading nations agreed to a compromise, but maintained the blockade during negotiations over the details. This incident was a major driver of the Roosevelt corollary and the subsequent U.S. big stick policy and dollar diplomacy in Latin America. When American diplomat Herbert Walcott Bowen returned to Venezuela in January 1904, he noticed Venezuela seemed more peaceful and secure. Castro would reassure Bowen that the United States and Venezuela were experiencing a strong relationship. However, after the Castro regime delayed fulfilling the agreements which ended the Venezuelan crisis of 1902-03, Bowen lost confidence. This would eventually lead to the Castro regime's economic policy angering the United States, France, and the Netherlands. This would play a crucial role in the Dutch-Venezuelan crisis of 1908. Dictator Marcos Pérez Jiménez overthrew the elected president, Romulo Gallegos, and seized power in the 1948 Venezuelan coup d'état. During this prosperity, foreign investment, particularly from American oil companies, grew along with the support from the Jiménez regime. The anti-communist regime allowed and supported the exploitation of the country's natural resources by the American oil industry. As a portion of the profits made its way from companies like Mobil,